Pinned beneath a massive lion in the dead of night, the girl wasn't scared in the slightest. Instead, she just gave it a little punch, and then playfully patted its big head. She even planted a kiss right on its fluffy cheek. But little did she know, this lion was actually a male beastman, and her innocent actions were exactly the same as accepting his courtship. Her name was Nian Nian. She had mysteriously transmigrated into an interstellar beastman world where females were worshipped and males were treated like dirt. The gender ratio here was a staggering 1 to 79. Because of this, a single female could have one official husband and an unlimited number of side husbands. These men would be fiercely loyal, willing to lay down their lives to protect their wife. After all, no matter how powerful a male beastman was, they absolutely needed the spiritual soothing of a female. Without it, they'd completely lose their minds and turn into feral, rampaging beasts. Nian Nian figured that since she was just a normal human, and not a real beastman female, she probably didn't have any of this spiritual power, so she assumed she wouldn't be very popular around here. But man, was she wrong. The second she received her smart bracelet from the Female Protection Association, the number of marriage proposals on her screen started skyrocketing. The staff gently explained, since you don't have a partner right now, your profile is open to proposals by default, and it gets broadcasted to all the eligible bachelors out there. Now, the Empire wouldn't force a female into marriage, but for their own safety. Unmarried females were required to have at least 3 guardians. Back on Earth, Nian Nian was severely traumatized by her family forcing her into blind dates, so marriage was the absolute last thing on her mind right now. So, she just picked the first 2 guys she laid eyes on, Major General Leon and Dr. Lu Zhan, to be her official guardians. Ever since they found her, these 2 had treated her with such incredible care and tenderness. Letting them become her new family seemed like the absolute best choice she could make. And honestly, the feeling was entirely mutual. Not only was Nian Nian undeniably gorgeous and sweet, she actually treated them with genuine respect. You have to understand, the females in this world were so high and mighty, they practically treated the men like disposable slaves. Females always ate first, while the men had to stand around and wait on them hand and foot. But Nian Nian, she didn't just sit down and eat with them, she even insisted on cooking for them. That was completely unheard of in this universe. So, what started as just a fond affection from her 2 guardians quickly blossomed into a desperate, burning desire to stay by her side forever. Right now, they had just arrived at Leon's private villa. The Empire's youngest Major General blushed furiously as he led Nian Nian into the sunniest, most beautiful bedroom in the house. As for himself, he took the room right next door, secretly daydreaming that if his sweet wife ever allowed him to spend the night, his life would be absolutely perfect. The moment he got back to his room, Leon received a video call from his uncle, the Grand Marshal of the Empire, and he flat out refused to let Leon become Nian Nian's partner. His reason? During his last medical exam, Leon's mutation instability level had already hit 74. The second that number hit 80, he would completely lose control and violently shift into his mindless, feral beast form. But no matter how hard Leon begged and pleaded, he couldn't shake his uncle's ironclad resolve to find him a top-tier, A-class female partner instead. The call ended in a bitter argument. A dark, suffocating wave of anxiety and frustration started tearing through Leon's mind. His instability levels began to dangerously spike, and the exact moment it hit 80, the man violently shifted into a massive male lion, shattering the window as he leapt out. He plunged straight down from the 2nd floor. By the time Lu Zhan rushed in, he was already a second too late. He immediately dispatched a massive squad of officers to hunt him down. Meanwhile, Nian Nian had already fallen fast asleep, completely undisturbed by the chaotic riot outside. That is, until the dead of night, when through her hazy sleep, she suddenly felt something big and furry, nuzzling right against her cheek. She groggily opened her eyes, only to lock eyes with a pair of glowing, feral pupils piercing through the darkness. Her heart practically stopped right then and there. A massive male lion had its head resting right on Nian Nian's chest, just watching her quietly. They locked eyes for a long time. Eventually, she realized the lion didn't seem to have any intention of attacking her. Mustering up her courage, she slipped out of bed to go look for Leon and Lu Zhan, but neither of them was around. Then, it hit her. A sudden thought popped into her head. She reached out and waved a hand in front of the lion's face. "Are you a beast man? Can you understand me?" But the lion just stared intently at her hand, and let out an excited, low rumble from its throat. Startled, Nian Nian snatched her hand back immediately. "Guess it really is just an animal, not a beast man." She went and grabbed a chunk of fresh meat, hoping that keeping it fed would keep her from becoming its next meal. But to her surprise, the lion didn't even glance at the meat. Instead, it just started licking her hand, over and over. Seeing this, Nian Nian got a bit bolder. She actually reached out and stroked the lion's belly. And when the massive beast not only let her pet it, but even started purring like a giant cat, Nian Nian got totally hooked. Eventually, the girl and the lion just curled up together in a big pile and dozed right back to sleep. When morning came and she finally woke up, the lion was nowhere to be seen. She honestly thought she'd just dreamed the whole thing. Later, Lu Zhan told her that Leon had left early for a mission back at the base. She didn't think much of it. But while she was eating, Lu Zhan suddenly mentioned that he had an emergency mission and had to leave too. Oh, an emergency? It's okay, you go on ahead. That left Nian Nian all alone in the house. She went back to her breakfast, when suddenly crash. A huge noise came from Leon's room. Seconds later, a very familiar furry head poked into the dining room. Yep, no doubt about it. It was the exact same lion from last night. So it really wasn't a dream after all. It had been too dark last night to see clearly. But now, she could see strange, dark mist clinging to the lion's body, swirling around it like creeping shadows. She reached out to touch it, but her fingers went right through. Nian Nian had a bad feeling that this dark mist was hurting the lion, so she focused all her attention on trying to make it go away. Suddenly, a patch of the dark mist just vanished right before her eyes. But at the exact same moment, a wave of intense exhaustion washed over her. It wasn't a physical tiredness, it was mental. Her mind immediately jumped to what she'd heard about female beastmen. Wait, do I have spiritual power too? She looked over at the lion. Its eyes were half closed, and it was letting out a deep, contented purr. Nian Nian quietly tapped her communicator to call Lu Zhan, whispering that a lion had somehow gotten into the house. To her surprise, he immediately fired back a video call and frantically ordered her to hide in the panic room by the closet. But the noise woke the lion, and it suddenly loomed right behind her. On the screen, Lu Zhan instantly recognized Leon's beast form. He was terrified the idiot would accidentally swat the fragile little female and flatten her. Just as he was panicking, the lion's eyes suddenly turned downright vicious. It took a few steps back and lowered its body. A classic pouncing stance. A split second later, it lunged straight at the man on the holographic screen. Nian Nian rushed over to check if the lion was hurt, but seeing its thick hide and sturdy frame, and realizing it didn't have a scratch on it, she unceremoniously smacked it right on the head. Hey, what is wrong with you, trying to bite people? Watching this, Lu Zhan's eyes started twitching wildly. Still, he urged Nian Nian to get as far away from the beast as possible, promising he was rushing back right now. Before Nian Nian could even answer, the lion tackled her straight onto the soft bed. It growled menacingly at the screen, staring Lu Zhan down, making it crystal clear who she belonged to. Lu Zhan honestly couldn't stomach watching that stupid lion acting all possessive and lovey-dovey with his little female. So he just abruptly hung up. Nian Nian, meanwhile, was left half-heartedly fending off an incredibly excited lion, while she continued to deal with the dark mist on the lion's body. Suddenly, she saw its ears twitch. It turned to look out the window, its gaze sharp and guarded. Then, with a powerful leap, it jumped right out the window. Amidst Nian Nian's gasp of shock, it vanished without a trace in the blink of an eye. The moment Lu Zhan came back, he saw Nian Nian leaning out of the broken window, peeking around. Terrified, he sprinted into the house in just a few strides, and grabbed her tightly around the waist. He pulled her firmly into his arms, dragging her away from the edge. It was the very first time in Nian Nian's life being held by a man like this. Her small face instantly flushed crimson. She had no idea why Lu Zhan was suddenly holding her so tightly. At first, Lu Zhan only wanted to get his little female away from that dangerous broken window. But now, he could smell Nian Nian's unique, sweet, and warm scent. After taking a few deep breaths, he finally forced himself to let her go, stepping back with his head bowed to apologize. I am so sorry I overstepped. But please, promise me, you will never stand anywhere that dangerous again. Only then did Nian Nian realize what she had done wrong. She quickly explained that she was just looking for the lion. It had just jumped out the window and disappeared. But Lu Zhan told her that wasn't just a lion. It was a male beastman who had lost control. In that state, they have no reason, and they cannot speak. They are also incredibly aggressive. As he spoke, he kept a close eye on Nian Nian's expression, terrified of seeing any disgust on her face. After all, females absolutely loathe the brutal, unrefined beast forms of males. That was exactly why males always stayed in their human forms, almost never shifting into their beast forms in daily life. To his surprise, Nian Nian stayed quiet for a long time. There wasn't a single trace of disgust on her face. All he could see was pure sympathy and heartbreak. She murmured, if I have mental energy, does that mean I can save him? Hearing this, Lu Zhan had never felt so insanely jealous of Leon in his entire life. He swallowed hard, forcing his emotions down to comfort the girl. You don't need to take that burden onto yourself. He isn't your mate. Besides, an S-rank male can only be soothed by a female who is a rank or higher. And the Empire hasn't had a single female awaken S-rank mental energy in hundreds of years. Even females with a rank energy make up only 2% of the entire female population. He didn't tell Nian Nian that he was also an S-rank beastman. He just wanted to be her male. Even if he could never be soothed, he was willing to peacefully accept whatever tragic end awaited him. Nian Nian snapped out of her daze and started telling Lu Zhan about that dark mist she had seen hovering over the lion. To her shock, Lu Zhan had never even heard of such a thing. Even the legendary S-rank females from the past had never mentioned seeing any dark mist while they were alive. Nian Nian couldn't help but ask again, then how do the other females actually soothe the male's mental energy? Could you maybe teach me? Before she could even finish her sentence, Lu Zhan's fair face flushed completely crimson. His eyes darted away, completely unable to look at her, as if she had just whispered some filthy, teasing proposition to him. It took him a long while to steady his breathing. He stammered, females they usually only ever soothe their own mates. Because the way they do it, is. Nian Nian instantly understood. Her pretty face burned, turning beet red in a flash. And Lu Zhan just had to add fuel to the fire. You've lost your memory, so I won't take your invitation seriously this time. But if you ever invite me again I absolutely will. Nian Nian was so utterly mortified she wished the ground would just open up and swallow her whole. But suddenly, Lu Zhan stepped forward, grabbing her shoulder and gently covering her mouth with his hand. His gaze snapped toward Leon's room, full of high alert. The door slowly creaked open, and out walked Leon, looking impeccably sharp. What exactly are you two doing? He frowned, staring at their intimate posture, feeling like something was about to happen any second. Lu Zhan narrowed his eyes and gently let go of the girl. Nian Nian turned to Leon, asking curiously, I thought you went back to base for a mission? Why are you suddenly back? Did you forget to bring something? His memory was stuck right before he lost control. He didn't even know that he was supposedly on a mission back at the base. Thank God Lu Zhan stepped in to save him. Using the excuse of looking for his terminal, the two men headed into the bedroom alone. He pulled up the video call log between him and Nian Nian, playing the recording back for Leon to see. Watching that huge, muscular golden man. And he's even licking her. Leon's face grew redder and redder the more he watched. He couldn't believe this shamelessly flirtatious lion was actually him. And when Nian Nian in the video playfully smacked the lion and then comforted it, she actually planted a kiss right on his cheek. He felt so blissfully happy he could just pass out. Because in the interstellar era, if a male deliberately shifts into his beast form in front of a female, it's a courtship signal. If the female willingly reaches out to stroke him, it means she accepts him. And Nian Nian didn't just pet him. She kissed him, seeing Leon about to float away on cloud 9. Lu Zhan quickly splashed cold water on his fantasy, snapping him back to reality. Don't overthink it. Nian Nian didn't know you were a beastman then. She thought you were just a normal lion. Now, grab the things you accidentally left at my house. And get out. Leon gritted his teeth, glaring daggers at Lu Zhan. He didn't want to give his rival an opening, but he really had no choice but to leave. Even though he had shifted back into his human form, his frenzy level had already hit 80. He had to report to the Control Bureau for mandatory observation. But after finishing his medical exam at the bureau, everyone was absolutely stunned. Not only had Leon pulled himself out of his frenzied state in just 17 hours, but his frenzy level had actually dropped down to 70. That was even better than the spiritual pacification of a Class A female. It was nearly on par with the soothing effects of a Class S female. Leon found it strange, too. Thinking back to how he had stayed by Nian Nian's side during his loss of control, he asked the researchers, can a female who's on the verge of awakening, but hasn't officially awakened yet, perform spiritual pacification on me? The researcher nodded. If that female is already showing fluctuations in her spiritual energy, then yes, it's possible. Realizing that a female who hadn't even fully awakened yet could successfully soothe a Class S male, the researchers grew even more ecstatic. Then she might just awaken S-class mental power. The Empire hasn't seen a female with S-class mental power in hundreds of years. If one were to actually appear, she would absolutely be worshipped like a god. Everyone was thrilled, but Leon's face turned grim. Because the method for mental soothing. Could it be that when he lost control, he didn't just shamelessly harass Nian Nian, but actually did something even worse to her? Meanwhile, out shopping with Lu Zhan, Nian Nian suddenly let out a huge sneeze. She rubbed her nose, guessing someone was probably talking about her behind her back. Passing by a potion shop, she noticed a mother and son aggressively pushing and shoving, while the young male next to them scrambled to pay the bill. The scene was way too familiar. It instantly reminded her of her life before she transmigrated, being bled dry by her own family, completely trampled on by her closest relatives. Right then, because the older son couldn't cough up the cash, the mother and her younger son started violently punching and kicking him. Nian Nian couldn't stand watching it anymore and was about to step in. And she saw the beaten young male's eyes turning redder and redder, until they suddenly shifted into a pair of vertical beast pupils. Or rather, he had completely transformed into a massive, ink-black snake. Lu Zhan moved like lightning, shoving Nian Nian safely behind him. Black mambas are highly venomous. Just one bite and if you don't get anti-venom in time, even God couldn't save you. The mother and son screamed in terror as the serpent coiled tightly around them. Faced with those deadly fangs, they broke down sobbing, crying hysterically. Nian Nian noticed a strange black mist swirling around the massive snake. After a moment of hesitation, she slipped off her jacket and tossed it right at the beast. Enraged by the sudden attack over its head, the frantic serpent lashed out, tightly wrapping around her jacket. It nudged the fabric with its head almost like it was sniffing it. But once it realized this soft, sweet-smelling thing wasn't alive, the beast went berserk again. It didn't drop Nian Nian's jacket, though. Instead, keeping it tightly wrapped, it slithered straight toward her. Seeing the massive creature closing in so fast, Lu Zhan kept the little female behind him and rolled up his sleeves, getting ready to end this, fast. But Nian Nian didn't want her own reckless move to become Lu Zhan's problem, so she screamed out, "Stop!" She threw her hand out to block it. Shockingly, the black mamba froze mid-strike the moment it heard her voice. With Lu Zhan right beside her, she slowly stepped toward the snake, and bravely reached out to pet it. "Good boy, you're doing so well," she whispered, focusing all her energy. This time, the sinister black mist stood no chance against her. It quickly melted away into nothing. Under Nian Nian's gentle strokes, the black snake's frantic energy slowly faded into calm. It docilely coiled around her, snuggling close. The surrounding crowd stared in absolute shock at the unbelievable scene. It couldn't even figure out what Nian Nian had done. All they saw was this little female, seemingly wielding some mysterious magic, taming a feral, berserk male until he was completely docile. Just then, the control bureau finally arrived. Worried that the black snake might panic again, Nian Nian gently tugged her fuzzy yellow jacket from its coils. She tied it around his body like a comforting hug, then gave the control bureau officers a nod. She signaled that it was safe to take him away, but made sure to speak up in his defense. He only lost control because he was being abused. Please don't punish him, he's the real victim here. Some people in the crowd scoffed at that, thinking a male should just blindly submit to a female. They muttered that he was just mentally weak. Nian Nian furrowed her delicate brows. A mother who can't even treat her own children equally, who exploits them and beats or curses them at every turn. Is that supposed to be right? Male or female, it doesn't matter. If you do something wrong, you need to be held accountable. The crowd went dead silent before erupting into massive cheers. Everyone totally agreed with Nian Nian. Some had even recorded the whole thing as proof. The Control Bureau officers promised solemnly that they would review all the evidence and make a fair judgment. The captain in charge then politely invited Nian Nian down to the station. He wanted the researchers to give her a quick medical check. Hearing that, Nian Nian panicked, thinking they were going to drag her off to draw blood. She darted behind Lu Zhan, demanding to know what they were planning. Thankfully, Lu Zhan stepped in and assured her. He promised her that everything would be fine. Only then did she agree to follow the staff to the bureau. The test results came back fast and left everyone absolutely floored. She hadn't even fully awakened yet, but her power levels were already higher than an A- rank. Were they actually about to witness the birth of an S-rank female? Heck, maybe even higher than S-rank. Throughout the entire history of the Empire, there was zero record of a double S-rank female ever existing. Sure, there were always a handful of powerhouse double S-rank males in every era, but a female? Never, like His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, and the famous god of war, Marshal Felix. It's just that without any females to soothe their minds, they're facing a hopeless situation. Once they lose control, there's no cure. If Nian Nian manages to awaken an S-class mental power, she'll become their one and only savior. She would be their destined mate. Lu Zhan looked at Nian Nian, who was surrounded by everyone like a star. His heart ached with bitterness. Awakening a high-level mental power was a great thing, of course. But this meant that all those high-ranking, powerful men in the Empire would become his rivals in love. On the way home, Nian Nian suddenly realized that keeping Lu Zhan and Leon by her side as guardians, when she didn't plan on taking them as mates, was just holding them back from finding their own partners. It was really selfish of her. So, she quietly suggested, "Being my guardian doesn't seem to do you any good. Why don't we just end a contract?" Lu Zhan was stunned. He quickly forced a calm smile. "No, I don't need anything out of this. You said it yourself, we're family. That's all I want. After all, you know, I'm an orphan." The moment he said that, he crouched at Nian Nian's feet and transformed right there into a giant, snow-white wolf. He looked up at her, his eyes filled with a pitiful plea. The guilt trip of a giant fluffy wolf was 10 times more effective than his human form. Nian Nian's heart instantly melted. She took back her words at the speed of light. "I'll be your family. I won't end the contract." As soon as she said that, she saw the snow wolf's fluffy tail start wagging happily, even sweeping right in front of her face. She tried so hard to resist, but in the end, Nian Nian just couldn't hold back. She reached out her sinful hands to pet him. It wasn't until their aircraft stopped near the villa that Lu Zhan lowered his body, letting Nian Nian climb onto his back. Male beastmen would only ever let their mates ride on their backs, but Nian Nian had absolutely no clue about this. Mumbling to herself, "We're family. A little piggyback ride is fine," she settled onto the snow wolf's sturdy back. she suddenly remembered that she had ridden a lion before, so she asked Lu Zhan. You mentioned you knew that lion. Who is he, anyway? The snow wolf stiffened all over, just as he was trying to figure out how to answer her question. He spotted Leon standing outside their front door like a child in timeout. He thought to himself, why hasn't the control bureau locked this guy up yet? He grumbled sourly, looking for the lion? He's right in front of you. Nian Nian's first thought was that Lu Zhan sounded really weird. He almost sounded jealous. Her second thought was the realization that she had been tricked. Instant anger flared up inside her. She grabbed the wolf's ears and started scolding him. The sight of the little female riding the giant wolf in such an intimate way deeply stung Leon's nerves, but the moment he remembered that he had probably forced himself on Nian Nian while he was out of control, he immediately lowered his head in shame. In a hoarse voice, he begged Nian Nian to speak with him alone. The two of them went up to the attic. Whenever the girl thought about tumbling around with him in his beast form, she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. But seeing her shifting gaze and avoidant eyes made Leon's heart sink even further. He knew if he really had hurt Nian Nian, that was why she was so terrified of him. The very next second, he dropped straight to his knees on the floor. Please, punish me however you see fit. Even if she beat him to death, he wouldn't utter a single complaint. Nian Nian stammered, completely caught off guard. She thought to herself, it was just a little lie, it's not that serious, right? So, with a wave of her little hand, she pardoned him completely. Leon couldn't believe she was actually forgiving him. A tidal wave of guilt crashed over him. Are you hurt badly? Nian Nian burst into a sweet little giggle. I'm not hurt at all. It's not like you bit me. But Leon still couldn't shake his worry. But the massive size of my beast form. And the anatomy is quite unique. Are you absolutely sure I didn't hurt you? Nian Nian looked at Leon's handsome, slightly flushed face. She finally realized what he was implying. Flustered, she stammered out a hasty denial. She wasn't some kind of pervert. She definitely didn't have any weird kinks. Sure, she absolutely loved their beast forms, but her affection was purely innocent, completely PG rated. As for why Leon's rampage levels had dropped, she explained the dark mist she'd seen clinging to his lion form, and exactly how she managed to clear it away. She even pulled out her medical report, which showed her spiritual fluctuations hovering right around an A- rank. As wild and unbelievable as it sounded, Leon didn't doubt her for a single second. Her unique method of spiritual soothing had caused quite the hilarious misunderstanding. They just stared at each other, faces burning red, until Leon finally broke the tension. His eyes brimmed with deep affection as he gently took Nian Nian's hand. Thank you for saving my life. The raw emotion in his gaze was way too intense to ignore. Startled, she quickly snatched her hand back. You're my guardian, so please don't be so formal with me. And, well, if you ever decide you don't want to be my guardian anymore, we can just be friends. Friends don't need to be so polite either. Leon immediately caught her drift. She was gently rejecting him. But there was no way he was giving up that easily. Could you at least tell me what kind of guys you like? For a moment, Nian Nian honestly drew a blank. Back on Earth, she had spent every single day hustling just to make a living. Romance was the absolute furthest thing from her mind. Even now, her dating experience was a big, fat zero. If I really had to say, I guess I'd like a guy who treats me well. And he'd have to be absolutely, entirely loyal to me, heart and soul. That was the best vague answer she could muster up. But honestly, I'm not even thinking about marriage right now. She hadn't held out any hope for marriage back on Earth, and coming to this world. There was also the massive lifespan gap to worry about. What if she couldn't even live to see her 500th birthday? Wouldn't she just end up breaking her partner's heart? As long as you don't despise me or try to chase me away. I just want to stay by your side. I don't care what my title is, anything is fine. Leon's tone was so devastatingly earnest, he was practically begging. Since he had already put it like that, Nian Nian could only let him have his way. Awkwardly, she scrambled to change the subject. So, how did you suddenly lose control anyway? Did someone piss you off? Leon looked a little ashamed. My rampage levels were already running dangerously high at 74. And then yesterday my uncle demanded that I leave you, and take another A-rank female as my maid instead. So we got into a massive fight over it. Hearing this, the smile completely vanished from Nian Nian's face. Leon's uncle didn't approve of her. In a flash, her mind dragged her straight back to Earth. Right back to that toxic family where absolutely everyone resented her. If your uncle doesn't like me, then you shouldn't like me either. Leon went into absolute panic mode. Desperately, he grabbed her hand again. I'm the one who likes you. It has absolutely nothing to do with him. My uncle has been emotionally dead inside since the day he was born. Honestly, he doesn't like anyone. Please don't hand me a death sentence just because of him. It's not fair. The Empire's Grand Marshal, Felix, had spent his early years leading the military to fend off invasions from other advanced civilizations. He was utterly ruthless and decisive in battle, earning the absolute loyalty and terrified respect of all his subordinates. People called him the God of War. But despite his fame, he remained unmarried to this day. All because of that extreme emotional detachment. Leon frantically tried to distance himself from his uncle's coldness. He has zero right to interfere with my love life. Even if you truly had no spiritual power at all, I wouldn't listen to him anyway. Besides, you might awaken a class mental power. If he knew that, he'd never object to me pursuing you again. Saying that, he pulled out his terminal and directly sent his uncle a video call invite. Fairy answered the call and only saw his nephew. He had no idea Nian Nian was standing right there off screen. He had already seen the video of Nian Nian soothing the black mamba. Combined with the report from the Control Bureau, stating that Leon's loss of control index had dropped, he guessed that Nian Nian's mental power was probably about to awaken. And it would be way higher than a class. Hearing this, Leon took a deep breath, suddenly shooting a sharp look at his uncle. Wait, doesn't that mean you'll have to serve the same wife as me? After all, an S-class male might be able to settle for less and pair up with an A-class female, but double S-class males simply can't. Over the last few centuries, the Empire has already seen several double S-class males completely lose control and degrade into mindless beasts because they couldn't receive any mental soothing. The other surviving double S-class males are also hanging by a thread. Fairy is the one with the lowest loss of control index and the best overall condition. But after all these years, those numbers have definitely added up to a dangerous level. So, if Nian Nian really does awaken S-class mental power, she will be his absolute only option. Fairy raised an eyebrow. Calm down, Leon, I'm not going to steal your little female. He had stayed unmarried all this time because he simply didn't want to deal with females. A cold and detached guy like him was only fit to be a war machine. He wasn't cut out to serve a delicate female. Let's spare ourselves the drama of an uncle and nephew fighting for favor. He stated firmly, even if I don't compete with you, there are way too many males who will. Females always crave something new. From now on, she's going to be surrounded by all sorts of males. With so many temptations around her, her interest in you will definitely fade over time. At the end of the day, S-class females are just in too high demand. If you chose an A-class female, you might still have a shot at being the primary husband. It's not too late to change targets now. At this point, Leon didn't even dare to look at Nian Nian's expression. He opened his mouth a few times, trying to get his uncle to shut up, but failed miserably. That was, until Lu Zhan knocked and came in. Dinner's ready. Leon, you've been dragging Nian Nian into a private chat for way too long. Don't make her late for dinner. Fairy's voice came to an abrupt halt. In the dead silence, Nian Nian slowly leaned into the video frame, offering an awkward greeting. Hello, uncle. She finally got a good look at Fairy's face. He was nothing like she imagined. He looked incredibly young, looking more like an older brother than an uncle. In reality, Fairy wasn't even 50 years old yet. Compared to the average lifespan of 500 years, he was right in his absolute prime. After a brief pause, Fairy bowed respectfully. Greetings, I am Fairy Ryan. Please forgive my earlier offensive remarks. I will handwrite a 3,000-word apology letter and send it to you along with a gift. Nian Nian was stunned, hastily bowing back at him. Oh no, you really don't have to do that. She quickly took the chance to defend herself. And I'm not the kind of person who just tosses people aside for something new. I will absolutely take responsibility for my future partners. I'd never abandon them. Long after the video call had ended, Fairy still couldn't snap out of his daze. Suddenly, he understood exactly why Leon had fallen for her at first sight. Meanwhile, hearing Fairy mention it, Nian Nian finally realized that someone had recorded her soothing the black snake Beastman and posted it on the Starnet. She opened her terminal to check, only to find that her follower count had already surpassed the total population of Earth. After hesitating for days, she finally dragged herself out of bed bright and early one morning. She told Lu Zhan and Leon that she wanted to do a quick live stream to thank her fans. Because the tips in her account alone were enough to last her several lifetimes. Since Leon hadn't started breakfast yet, Nian Nian decided to livestream herself cooking. She was going to make classic meat buns from her home planet, Earth. Even though it was a spur-of-the-moment stream. And so early in the morning, the moment she went live. Nian Nian took one look at the screen and realized her fans were actually reporting Lu Zhan and Leon. Just because she was about to cook. Shocked, she quickly threw her hands up. And frantically explained that she wasn't doing the actual cooking, Leon was. Lu Zhan was just moderating the stream. Her flustered reaction was so cute that the audience flooded the chat with compliments again. Even Lu Zhan couldn't resist ruffling her hair, seeing the cozy vibe between those two and feeling completely left out. Leon suddenly let out a sharp hiss. Looking over, he had actually cut his finger. Nian Nian dashed over in a heartbeat. She grabbed his bleeding hand, her face full of absolute worry. The chat instantly filled with question marks. The fans could instantly tell this was just one of Major General Leon's sneaky little tricks. But Nian Nian was completely clueless. Her heart aching, she dragged him over to wash the wound. Scrambled for the medical kit, and even gently blew on the bandage after wrapping it. Leon was stunned. He really hadn't expected this little trick to work so perfectly. If he had known, he would have cut himself deeper. Meanwhile, the chat was losing its absolute mind. After all, a female doting on a male like this was something they had never, ever seen before. By the way, that tiny cut was already healing. But the audience weren't the only ones annoyed. Lu Zhan, watching from the side, had finally had enough. He told Leon to go rest, saying he would keep Nian Nian company on the stream instead. Like hell Leon was going to let him win. The two of them immediately started bickering back and forth. Seeing that they didn't need her, Nian Nian turned her attention back to the holographic screen. She couldn't help but laugh, telling everyone they were overthinking things. They're not my mates. They're just my guardians. Like Lu Zhan said, he just wants to be my family. But the fans weren't fooled for a second. They practically exposed Lu Zhan's entire search history to prove his motives were anything but innocent. Nian Nian stared at the screen, totally dumbfounded. It finally clicked. That was true, then Lu Zhan's little strategy was working perfectly. She had definitely been distancing herself from Leon and getting way closer to him. She immediately decided to be fair and keep a strict distance from both of them. After showing them how to wrap the buns, she ignored them completely and focused purely on her audience. In the blink of an eye, Lu Zhan shifted into a giant wolf. He balanced a tray of buns on his head, trotting over to Nian Nian for praise. The viewers were absolutely stunned. They thought he had lost his mind. Shifting into his beast form like that? He was definitely going to get kicked out by the female. But the moment Nian Nian saw this giant, snow-white ball of fluff bounding toward her, her brain short-circuited, and she instinctively threw her arms around him for a huge hug. The viewers' jaws practically dropped to the floor. You have to understand, on the Empire's list of the most hated male beast forms among females, wolves were always right at the top. Females only ever chose fierce predator males to gain their power and status. Deep down, they heavily preferred gentle, herbivorous males. That's why lions, wolves, and leopards only held high status before marriage. Lower status at home, but highly respected outside. The classic example of having zero power at home. But Nian Nian? She completely shattered that stereotype. She buried herself entirely in the snow wolf's thick, fluffy fur, absolutely intoxicated by happiness. Leon's eyes were practically burning red with jealousy, having known Lu Zhan for years. This was the very first time he'd seen him act so utterly shameless. But if doing that meant he could get closer to Nian Nian, he didn't hesitate for a second. Transforming into a majestic, golden-maned lion, he desperately nuzzled his big head right into the little female's palms. A wolf right in front of her, and a lion right behind her. Nian Nian was completely, utterly captivated. She even forgot she was still live streaming. She was so lost in this fluffy paradise she couldn't pull herself out. Meanwhile, the live chat was absolutely losing its mind. The jealousy was literally spilling through the screen. Nobody would have ever dreamed that their beast forms could actually get this kind of royal treatment. And while Nian Nian wasn't paying attention, the stream turned into a massive matchmaking frenzy. Countless males were flooding her private messages, sending her all their personal details. Who knows how much time passed before Nian Nian finally snapped back to reality. Seeing that it was almost time for breakfast, she realized she'd only made a few steamed buns. Thank goodness those two guys were actually reliable. When they got down to business, in no time at all, the first batch of steamed buns was out of the steamer. Thick, hot steam billowed into the air. The rich aroma of fresh dough and savory meat hit everyone right in the face. The smart terminals could transmit the scent, but there was no way for the viewers to actually taste them. They could only drool as they watched Nian Nian hand one to Leon and Lu Zhan, hand-feeding them each a bun. Seeing them eat with such huge appetites made the little female incredibly happy too. Then, she looked at the stream interface and gave a sweet smile. I actually started today's stream just to thank you all. I'm going to randomly draw 100 viewers and send each of you a portion of these steamed buns. Instantly, the stream's giveaway system crashed from the massive traffic. Meanwhile, at the military headquarters, Faley had also entered the giveaway. Unfortunately, he didn't win. He thought he must be losing his mind to actually feel disappointed over such a trivial, insignificant little thing. He decided to drop it right then and there. He wouldn't pay any more attention to this little female. But who would have thought? Not even 2 seconds later, his terminal suddenly pinged with a notification. Nian Nian has requested to add you as a friend. Without a single ounce of hesitation, he accepted the request at light speed. When he found out Nian Nian wanted to mail him a portion of the steamed buns, he immediately told her he was at the military headquarters. At exactly 9 o'clock, the atmosphere in the headquarters was dead serious. Everyone was strictly focused on their work. Suddenly, the marshal strode right toward the main entrance. Everyone went as quiet as frightened quails. Secretly stealing glances, they noticed the marshal seemed to sign for a package. Then, holding the item carefully against his chest with both hands, he carried it straight back to his office. Somebody managed to catch a glimpse of what the marshal received. It was actually steamed buns. After a brief, stunned silence, the whole room erupted in bewildered disbelief. They simply couldn't believe it. So, they sent a brave representative to do some scouting. When the guy came back, he completely lost it, venting to his colleagues. The Marshal is totally rigging things behind the scenes. He claimed Nian Nian sent the buns exclusively to him. Everyone immediately started guessing that it was because the Marshal was Major General Leon's uncle. There was absolutely no way he had some kind of private relationship with Nian Nian. Leon thought the exact same thing. But still, he couldn't hold back from firing off a message to Fei to boldly declare his territory. He repeatedly emphasized that Nian Nian only saw him as a respectable elder, and sending him buns was just her way of showing care for her uncle on Leon's behalf. He even praised the little female to the high heavens, just to rub it in that a profit-driven uncle like him didn't deserve her at all. Fei chuckled softly, shaking his head without replying. He had to admit that Leon was right. Only the purest, most sincere, and passionate love could ever be worthy of a sweet little female like Nian Nian. After spending decades as a cold-blooded animal in the eyes of everyone else, having a little bunny suddenly throw herself at him, warming him with her own body heat, it gave him the thrilling sensation of an old, dry house suddenly catching fire. Fei sent Nian Nian a text to say thank you. Seeing her call him uncle in every single message, he couldn't help but find it pretty funny. He playfully pointed out that he was only 47, which really wasn't that old. He told her she didn't need to call him uncle, and mentioned that he had prepared a gift for her. It would be delivered by noon tomorrow at the latest. After finishing her chat with Fei, Nian Nian noticed a black snake avatar blinking in her friend requests. It looked exactly like a young male who had completely lost control on the street. She accepted the request and confirmed it was indeed that same boy. His name was Xie Jili, and he wanted to return her clothes to her. He also wanted to get her a gift. Nian Nian remembered that he looked like a young student, and was probably pretty tight on cash. There was no need for him to waste his money on her. So she politely told him she didn't need anything. Then, she packed up a fresh box of steamed buns, and secretly shipped them off to him. Half an hour later, at an underground fighting arena near the Central Star, Xie Jili sat in the shadows beneath the ring, quietly scrolling through his chat history with Nian Nian. Suddenly, a man marched over, and tossed a clear, insulated container right into his lap. "Hey, Black Mamba, someone sent you a package." Xie Jili blankly caught the container. When he saw what was inside, he shot up in his seat, absolutely thrilled. A bright, lively spark instantly returned to his dark, gloomy eyes. He popped open the lid, and gently pulled out a piping hot steamed bun. Right before it was his turn to fight, Xie Jili wolfed down every single one of them. He carefully tucked the empty container away for safekeeping, and only then did he stand up to step into the ring. In this match, he fought with ferocious speed, crushing his opponent. But, just like always, he spared the guy's life, which meant he only took home half the prize money. Clutching his empty food container, Xie Jili drifted out of the underground arena like a ghost. A small jewelry boutique had just opened for the day. He walked right up, and carefully picked out a beautiful blue iris necklace. 12,000 star coins. That was enough to cover 4 months of his living expenses. But he didn't even hesitate, and paid for it on the spot. Nervously, he sent a text to Nian Nian, telling her that he'd bought her a gift, and that it would arrive by tomorrow at the latest. The very next day, the moment Nian Nian woke up, she found 2 packages waiting for her. She carefully tore them open. The first box held a stunning necklace, and the second box contained a pair of cute bunny ear hair clips. The playful hair clips obviously didn't match Fei's mature vibe, so she naturally assumed that Xie Jili had sent them. She sent them each a sweet text to say thank you, then neatly tucked both gifts away. On top of that, she also received an elegant invitation to a royal ball. The grand event was scheduled for next month at the royal estate on the Central Star. Officially, it was meant for selecting the crown princess, but in reality, it was just one massive matchmaking party. All the invited males were the absolute top-tier elites, while every single female had a rank spiritual power. The video of Nian Nian calming the furious Black Mamba had gone totally viral on the Star Network, so naturally, she had caught the royal family's eye. Meanwhile, over at the royal palace, the atmosphere was incredibly tense. The emperor and empress were both stressed out of their minds, and all because right after the invitations were sent out, things had gone horribly wrong. The crown prince disappeared. That day, just as Nian Nian walked into the courtyard, he saw a snow-white little furball curled up on the swing. Stepping closer to take a look, she was instantly completely melted by its cuteness. It was so soft and fluffy all over, looking just like a cloud of cotton candy. But wait, it had the character for king on its forehead. Looking absolutely adorable but somehow majestic, exactly like a tiny, ungrown tiger cub. Nian Nian fought back an overwhelming urge to just scoop it up and pet it, carefully inspecting it from head to tail. Finally, she came to a conclusion. This was just a normal little kitty, not a beastman. Because a male beastman's animal form would always have at least a little bit of dark mist swirling around it. And this little kitty didn't have a single trace of dark mist. It was completely clean. Since it wasn't a beastman, Nian Nian excitedly reached out her naughty little hands. With her natural gift for making animals love her, the little white kitty didn't stand a chance either. It let out the sweetest, squeakiest little meows at the girl, and then dove headfirst right into Nian Nian's soft, sweet-smelling embrace. It was so cozy that it even rolled over and showed its tummy. But no one could have ever guessed that this clingy, cuddly little baby was actually the crown prince of the empire. As an incredibly rare double S-class male, the crown prince's beast form was the ancestral, divine white tiger. To hide from danger and build up his energy, he would often shrink back down into his juvenile form, and a baby white tiger basically just looked like a little white kitty. This was a top secret of the royal family. Nobody outside the direct bloodline knew a thing about it. Watching the little white kitty rolling around and acting so cute in her arms, Nian Nian's heart was totally melting. She buried her face in its fluffy head, giving it a million crazy kisses. It was just a little pity, though. Her eyes accidentally drifted down to a certain spot, and she let out a tiny snort. This super clingy and cuddly little kitty was actually a boy, but she stubbornly named him Cotton Candy anyway, with the cute nickname Tang Tang. Figuring that little Tang Tang might be hungry, she headed off to the kitchen to whip him up a snack. When Lu Zhan heard she was cooking for a stray cat, his face instantly darkened. He insisted Nian Nian take him to see it, but, by the time they got back to the swing, the little kitty was nowhere to be found. Lu Zhan figured the creature was obviously hiding from him. He warned Nian Nian that this cat had a sketchy background, and it might actually be a beastman who had sneaked in. But Nian Nian firmly shot that idea down, totally confident because it didn't have any dark mist. Lu Zhan had to admit she had a point, because as long as someone was a male beastman, even if they were underage, their frenzy levels would never just be at 0. So, maybe it really was just a normal cat. With the kitty running off, Nian Nian felt a little empty inside. Luckily, she had other things to do, which quickly washed away her disappointment. Getting ready for the grand ball a month away, Nian Nian had asked Lu Zhan to find her a ballroom dancing instructor, and right on cue, Coleman arrived a little early. He looked way different from his resume photo. In person, the man was far more mature and incredibly elegant. Every little move he made was so dripping with charm that it would make countless young male beastmen pale in comparison. Thankfully, he was already over 300 years old, and happily married. He was a very professional private tutor. But still, it made Lu Zhan instantly tense up. Nian Nian's polite and friendly attitude instantly won Coleman over. He couldn't help but want to design a custom evening gown just for her. You see, tutoring was just a little side gig for when he got bored. His true identity was actually the absolute top fashion designer in the entire empire. It was just that he was semi-retired now, almost never taking personal orders anymore. If someone could show up to the royal ball, wearing a custom gown handmade by Coleman, it would be an absolute honor that everyone would die for. But Nian Nian had absolutely no idea. So, she nodded without hesitation and agreed, I completely trust your taste. After the 2-hour tutoring session ended, Nian Nian thought of that fluffy, sweet little cat again. She thought taking a stroll in the courtyard might give her a chance to see it. Unfortunately, she searched for a long time but found absolutely nothing. With the little cat constantly on her mind, she slept very restlessly that night. In her dream, the tiny white cat actually transformed into a towering, ferocious tiger, and gently gave her a rose. The moment she opened her eyes, she was still reminiscing about the 2 fluffy creatures from her dream, one giant and one tiny, secretly wishing it could all be real. She would definitely kidnap Cotton Candy and take him home to keep. Then she noticed there was actually a real rose sitting right on her windowsill. She froze for a long moment, then spun around and bolted toward the courtyard. Seeing Nian Nian rush out of her bedroom in such a panic, Lu Zhan chased after her with a heavy, serious expression. He followed her all the way to the swing in the courtyard, where he finally laid eyes on the little white cat she had mentioned yesterday. He watched with his own eyes as Nian Nian buried her face right into the little cat's fluffy belly, holding it in her arms and kissing it over and over again. A wave of bitterness washed over Lu Zhan's heart, though it was mixed with a tiny spark of relief. Thank goodness this was just an ordinary little cat, and not some male beastman. It took Nian Nian quite a while to finally pull herself away and look up. Realizing that her crazy, obsessive cat cuddling had actually been witnessed by Lu Zhan, she suddenly felt extremely shy. Blushing furiously, she begged Lu Zhan to make a portion of the cat food she had talked about yesterday. Then, she took the sweet-smelling rose, tucked it beautifully into her hair, and began playfully teasing Cotton Candy. The little cat was noticeably thrilled. It let out the most adorable purring sounds, wiggling back and forth in Nian Nian's arms just like a fluffy little caterpillar. As it nuzzled affectionately against her, Nian Nian's heart completely melted. She gently pinched its chubby little cheeks. Do you want to come home with me, hum? Just then, Lu Zhan walked over, carrying the freshly made cat food. Nian Nian took the dish and coaxed the little cat to eat. But Cotton Candy just leaned in, gave the small plate a quick sniff, and haughtily turned its little face away, flat out refusing to take a single bite. It wasn't that he hated the smell of the meat paste. What he hated was the guy who made it. He felt a deep sense of hostility toward him. But, the moment Nian Nian scooped some up with a tiny spoon and held it to his mouth, he simply couldn't bring himself to refuse her. Standing off to the side, Lu Zhan suddenly felt his own status was seriously under threat. Without making a sound, he shifted into his beast form. The sweet, clingy little kitty who had just been acting so cute for Nian Nian suddenly found itself facing the massive, towering beast of a snow wolf, yet it showed absolutely zero fear. It even stepped right up to confront the giant wolf, desperately trying to shield Nian Nian behind its tiny body. Right on cue, the snow wolf let out a soft, pitiful whimper, playing the victim like he had been terribly wronged. Nian Nian's heart instantly ached for him. She gently stroked his huge, fluffy head. She whispered softly, comforting him. "Oh, don't be mad at Cotton Candy. He's just a little kitty who doesn't know any better." Seeing this, the little cat flew into a helpless fit of absolute rage, its entire body trembling with fury. It puffed up like an angry little white furball, watching Nian Nian's hand lingering so gently on that obnoxious jerk. Its crystal clear blue eyes began to tremble, and suddenly two huge, pathetic tears rolled right down its furry cheeks. Nian Nian was so utterly shocked by this that she lost her voice. She genuinely thought the poor thing was just terrified of the giant wolf. So, she frantically urged Lu Zhan to shift back. But the very split second Lu Zhan returned to his human form, the little cat lashed out, fiercely swiping its claws right across him, before darting away at lightning speed. It vanished completely from sight. It all happened so incredibly fast. Nian Nian hadn't even processed what just happened, when she finally noticed the bloody scratch marks on the back of Lu Zhan's hand. Her face filled with deep guilt as she began to apologize profusely. Lu Zhan quickly waved it off, insisting he was perfectly fine. "A tiny scratch like this is absolutely nothing for a thick-skinned male like me," he assured her. He even went so far as to beg Nian Nian to punish him, blaming himself for scaring her precious little cat away. But even though that's what he said out loud deep down, his heart was absolutely bursting with triumphant joy. It finally managed to shoo away that pesky little kitten. But who would have thought, right around dusk, the kitten appeared right back at Nian Nian's bedroom window. Nian Nian happily scooped it up and brought it inside. Cuddling the sweet, soft little cotton candy in her arms, she asked softly, "Do you want to stay and keep me company?" Nian Nian then started a video call with Leon, who had just returned to the military base. Can I keep a cat in your house?" Once she got a warm yes, she eagerly told Leon all about how she had found the little guy. The sound of their lively chatter quickly drew Lu Zhan over. He let out a cold scoff at Leon through the screen. "Shouldn't you upgrade the security system for this place?" Leon wasn't about to take that insult. The security for this house is S-class. Unless it's a completely harmless ordinary animal, or a double S-class male. Absolutely nothing else can get in. And there are only a tiny handful of double S-class males in the entire empire. Who would be bored enough to go trespassing into someone's private home? Hearing this, Lu Zhan finally let his guard down. Even though he and the cat had a totally clashing vibe, since Nian Nian loved it so much, they might as well keep it. He even put aside their little grudge and cooked up another bowl of cat food for it. Unfortunately, the kitten still looked completely disgusted. It would only eat if Nian Nian fed it with her own hands. Seeing this, Leon secretly made up his mind. He definitely needed to make time to learn how to cook for cats. After all, winning over Nian Nian's pet was basically the same as winning over Nian Nian herself. After finishing feeding the kitten, Nian Nian had just gotten back to her room when she received a message from Felix. "Nian Nian, there's something I want to ask you. But it might be a little forward reading this." Nian Nian immediately tensed up. She panicked, thinking her identity as a transmigrator from another world had been exposed. She nervously typed back, "Go ahead. Have you found anyone besides Leon and Lu Zhan?" According to Empire law, if an unmarried female goes an entire month without finding a third guardian, the system will automatically assign her a match. Nian Nian had completely forgotten about this whole rule. Now that he brought it up, it seemed like she had less than half of that 1-month deadline left. She frustratedly ruffled her hair, completely at a loss for what to do. Right then, Felix inexplicably sent over a copy of his own medical checkup report, followed right after by his personal resume, and a full proof of his financial assets. The list even included the ownership deeds to several entire planets. Nian Nian stared at her screen, completely dumbfounded. The very next second, Felix actually pitched himself to her, earnestly expressing his desire to become her guardian. Nian Nian felt a massive headache coming on. She instantly remembered how fiercely guarded Leon acted, treating Felix like a massive love rival. She immediately realized this was a terrible idea. Trying to let him down gently, she replied, Leon probably wouldn't be too happy about that, however, even though Felix clearly understood her rejection. He had absolutely no intention of giving up. He quickly reassured her, Leon won't mind at all. He's a major general, and he has to work long-term at the military base. As his uncle, it's perfectly fitting for me to step in and take care of you. To be honest, Felix had been eyeing that third guardian spot for Nian Nian for a long time now. He was just waiting until Leon was fully settled back at the base before bringing it up. But he wasn't overly pushy about it. He simply asked Nian Nian to give him some consideration. To put it in Earth terms, this was called voluntarily offering to be a backup boyfriend. Since he had put it so sincerely, Nian Nian had no choice but to say she would think it over seriously. That night, she was sleeping soundly, cuddling her little cotton candy, when she suddenly felt an intense, crushing weight pressing down on her chest. She could barely breathe, her fragile little body couldn't handle the pressure, and she let out a soft, uncomfortable whimper in her sleep. The crushing weight instantly vanished, and her breathing finally returned to normal. When she woke up the next morning, Nian Nian had completely forgotten all about that weird, groggy midnight experience. She also totally missed the guilty little glances the white kitten kept sneaking at her. After finishing her breakfast, Lu Zhan went to the Imperial Military Academy to report for duty, while Nian Nian quietly snuck out with cotton candy in her arms to get her pet registered. Since her transmigration, this was her very first time going out alone, and her first time taking public transport. She looked around cautiously, fascinated by every little thing. Little did she know, her mere presence was causing absolute shockwaves among the crowd. After all, seeing a female on a cheap public shuttle was even more unbelievable than running into royalty. And when they noticed the little fluff ball in her arms, the crowd collectively gasped, "Oh my god, this poor female is actually out here all alone with her cub. What on earth has she been through?" Unless all of her mates had died in some tragic accident, they couldn't think of any other explanation. A few bold males even stepped up, eagerly offering to take care of her and her little one. Nian Nian just looked completely lost, politely turning them down one by one. But to the onlookers, she just looked like she was trying to stay strong, which only made their hearts ache even more for her. Before long, a news headline popped up: "Widowed female raises cub alone. Forced to ride public transport in tragic hardship." It was plastered all over the Star Network. The article was full of absolute nonsense, accompanied by a single, super blurry photo. In the picture, the petite female's face was hidden as she gently looked down, coaxing her cub. When the Empress saw the news, her eyes instantly locked onto the little cub in the female's arms. She rushed over to the Emperor, who was busy with state affairs, and begged him to check if it was Kong Lin. The Emperor took a closer look. He really does look like him. But he quickly shook his head with a bitter smile. When that boy heard we were throwing a bridal ball for him, he fought it tooth and nail. Why on earth would he suddenly run off to live with some random female? Besides, he would never just willingly shift into his juvenile form. As the crown prince of the empire, Tan Kong Lin has always been fiercely proud since he was a child. He hates being in his juvenile form because it makes him look weak. He completely despises it. Unless he was critically injured, and the little kitten in this photo looks perfectly healthy. The Empress felt a heavy wave of disappointment. Deep down, she knew it too. This couldn't possibly be Kong Lin. He wasn't the clingy type at all. But she was just so desperately worried. Ever since Tan Kong Lin lost control and vanished, his whereabouts had been completely unknown. Right now, she had to grasp at whatever straws she could find. She ordered someone to contact the editor-in-chief of that news outlet. Meanwhile, Nian Nian never could have guessed that just taking her pet out to get registered would land her right on the front page of the tabloids. When Fei Li messaged her, proudly declaring that he had already taken care of the creep who took the secret photos and spread the fake news, she was frantically searching for her little cutie, completely beside herself. You see, just a few minutes ago, Nian Nian had placed the little kitten into the checkup machine at the pet registry. But before the door could even close, he bolted out of there like a flash of lightning. Little did she know, this specific scanner didn't just check for health issues, it could easily tell the difference between a real beastman and a normal pet. Even though His Royal Highness was in a feral state, his survival instincts were still razor sharp. Poor Nian Nian, though. She just assumed Cotton Candy got scared and ran off. She swore to herself that once she found him, they were going straight home. As for the checkup and registration, that could wait. Thank goodness, the moment she walked out the front doors of the registry, Cotton Candy suddenly popped out of nowhere. Nian Nian was absolutely overjoyed. Without hesitating, she splurged on a big bag of dried fish to comfort the poor little guy's traumatized soul. Figuring it would be pretty boring to just sit around at home all day, she decided to drop by and pay Lu Zhan a visit. Technically, outsiders aren't allowed to just wander into the military academy, but for females, they make exceptions. Nian Nian followed the route on her holopad. As she was cutting across a massive training ground, she saw a huge crowd gathered. Everywhere she looked, there were tall, strapping young cadets. The air was practically thick with testosterone. She was going to take a detour. But out of the corner of her eye, she spotted a familiar figure in the central combat ring. It was that black mamba Xie Jili. The two fighters in the ring were trading blows incredibly fast, but it was obvious Xie Jili had the upper hand. Nian Nian stepped up and tapped the guy next to her on the shoulder, asking what the match was all about. The cadet turned around, and the second he got a good look at her, he jumped out of his skin. A female? In an instant, the entire training ground erupted into absolute chaos. Everyone instantly forgot about the match, shoving and pushing just to catch a glimpse of the female's face. It couldn't be helped. The absurdly skewed gender ratio meant that so many males would go their whole lives without ever being graced by a female's attention. As they got older, they would eventually accept this harsh reality. But these cadets were young, hot-blooded, and at the absolute peak of their mating instincts. Nian Nian was like a helpless little bunny dropped straight into a wolf den. Surrounded by a pack of starving wolves with glowing green eyes, she felt incredibly small, fragile, and utterly defenseless. Even when her little white cat poked its head out, growling fiercely at the crowd in warning. It did absolutely nothing to deter the cadets, who were completely drunk on the presence of a beautiful female. They refused to back off, trying desperately to push their way even closer to her. The fight in the ring had already ended, but not a single soul was paying attention. Only Nian Nian, her eyes darting around nervously, happened to glance up at the stage. Her eyes locked right onto Xie Jili. The moment their gazes met, the young man's eyes went wide in shock, and he started frantically fixing his messy clothes. What is she doing here? Did she see him fighting like some kind of wild beast? Does she think he's too violent? Is she scared of him? His mind raced with what she might be thinking, and sheer panic set in. He felt absolutely hopeless, but to his surprise, Nian Nian's eyes lit up. Like he was her only lifeline, she threw her hand up and called out his name. Instantly, every single pair of eyes snapped toward the young male in the ring. Shock, envy, pure, burning jealousy, even though he had just won the Academy's Grand Melee Tournament, that victory meant absolutely nothing compared to being called out by a gorgeous little female in front of everyone. The guys who knew him were completely baffled. What on earth did a sweet little female see in him? Xie Jili was notoriously unpopular. He was a complete loner, always keeping to himself. He was broke, and constantly covered in cuts and bruises. Even if he was insanely strong, there was no way a female would ever look twice at a guy like him. Ignoring the hundreds of glaring eyes, he shoved his way through the crowd and walked straight up to Nian Nian. As he got close, he looked down at her and asked, his voice low and incredibly gentle. Where did you want to go? I can show you around the campus. If you'd like. Nian Nian was desperate for him to get her out of this terrifying situation, so she nodded frantically. But suddenly, another male stepped right in front of her. He was some minor noble, who clearly had bad blood with Xie Jili. He smirked. My lady, he purred. The name is Chu Shu. And as he spoke, he actually had the nerve to lean in dangerously close to her, taking it upon himself to greet Nian Nian with a kiss on the cheek. Using such an intimate greeting on a female he barely knew was straight-up harassment. Nian Nian frowned and immediately jerked away, just as it seemed she wouldn't be able to dodge in a split second. A cold glint flashed as the little cat suddenly bared her sharp claws. Xie Jili struck at the exact same moment, locking his hands around Chu Shu's throat and slamming him to the ground. Thank God he acted so fast. The military cadets watching couldn't help but break into a cold sweat. Because that white cat was ferocious enough to go straight for the jugular. She was so unbelievably fast that none of them felt confident they could have dodged that strike. Of course, right now, Chu Shu wasn't doing much better. He scrambled on his hands and knees, barely managing to get back on his feet. He gritted his teeth in fury. Even though Xie Jili had technically just saved his life, he didn't feel an ounce of gratitude. With all their old grudges and this new humiliation piling up, he glared venomously at Xie Jili, suddenly letting out a cold, mocking sneer. Look at you, guarding her like that. You look just like a pathetic dog. But then again, I guess it makes perfect sense. Only a lowly, broke loser like you would act like a simp for a powerless, commoner female. As Xie Jili's mortal enemy, Chu Shu obviously knew all about the juicy gossip of his public meltdown. Which was exactly how Nian Nian had caught his attention in the first place. With that said, he shifted his predatory gaze to Nian Nian. Why don't you ditch him and keep me company instead? I can give you so much more. Being with a bottom-feeder male like him. What could he possibly give you? Before he could even finish his sentence, a small stone struck him dead on, making him stumble and cry out in pain. He whipped his head around, only to see a group of senior professors glaring at him with absolute fury. Meanwhile, Lu Zhan quickly strode over to Nian Nian and dropped to one knee. Filled with remorse, he apologized for getting there so late. When Chu Shu saw this, he couldn't help but start trembling violently. He had completely forgotten. Lu Zhan was also one of Nian Nian's males. He might have the guts to provoke Xie Jili, but he would absolutely never dare to mess with Lu Zhan. Lu Zhan was notorious for being completely ruthless. The most shocking and violent incident in the history of the Imperial Military Academy was his doing. Even though he was just a medical student, he single-handedly beat several noble heirs so badly they had to be rushed to the emergency room. And because his strikes were perfectly calculated so he wouldn't actually kill them, he avoided criminal charges entirely, walking away with nothing more than a slap on the wrist. The senior professors accompanying Lu Zhan clearly remembered their star pupil's brutal past as well. They hurriedly held Lu Zhan back, terrified he was going to attack right then and there. Professor Li kept a stern face, declaring that a student like that would absolutely face strict disciplinary action. He then gave Lu Zhan the rest of the day off, telling him to go home and take good care of his little female. They really didn't want her leaving with a bad impression of the Imperial Military Academy because of today's mess. A few of the senior professors even took the initiative to line up and add Nian Nian as a contact. It was completely obvious just how much they valued her. Meanwhile, Shu Shu cowered pathetically off to the side, trying to make himself as invisible as possible. He turned his head and shot a look of pure hatred at Xie Jili. But he was genuinely terrified by the dark, murderous expression on the other man's face. The way Xie Jili was looking at him, it was like he was staring at a corpse. On her way home, Nian Nian received a message from Xie Jili. It was just 2 words. "I'm sorry." She could feel how terrible his mood was even through the screen. Nian Nian replied, "You didn't do anything wrong. Why are you apologizing? If anything, I should be thanking you for protecting me. It's just a shame we didn't get to tour the campus today." Those 2 short replies, Xie Jili read them over and over, dozens of times. But he never replied, because they were never going to see each other again. He stared coldly toward the royal palace. That was where all the high and mighty nobles lived. The Chu family was among them. He was going to fight fire with fire, meeting evil with evil, but once he walked down this path, his hands would be dirty. He wouldn't deserve to be near Nian Nian ever again, but at least he'd have the power to protect her. For the next few days, every message Nian Nian sent to Xie Jili was met with absolute silence. Not a single reply. Then, out of nowhere, the notoriously arrogant Shu Shu was beaten so badly he ended up in the hospital. The best part? He had no idea who actually did it. Meanwhile, Lu Zhan just smiled and nodded, quietly taking the credit, since Shu Shu had made way too many enemies over the years. He had no clue where to even start looking. Finally, he decided to take his anger out on the completely powerless Xie Jili. But to his shock, he was warned that this guy was strictly off limits, and might even be the one coming for the Chu family next. After sending yet another message to Xie Jili, Nian Nian scooped up the little cat. She was going to take it out to the yard to play. But the moment she opened her door, her vision went pitch black. She clutched her head and collapsed onto the floor. Right before she blacked out, she hazily saw something on the little cat. A thick, dark mist seemed to be rising from its body, exactly like the mist she had seen on the male beastman. Over in the lab, Lu Zhan's comms blared with an emergency alarm. He immediately dropped everything and rushed out. The little white cat was pacing around the unconscious Nian Nian, meowing frantically. Normally, Nian Nian would be petting its head by now, softly coaxing it. But now, no matter how much it nudged her, or licked her face, Nian Nian just lay there, completely motionless. She wouldn't wake up. Tears began to well up in the little white cat's big, round eyes. It curled up into a miserable little ball. But a few seconds later, its body rapidly expanded, shifting into a massive, awe-inspiring white tiger. It gently nudged Nian Nian with its massive paws, trying to move her onto the bed. But after trying from several different angles, it just couldn't do it. The crown prince was so utterly helpless he could almost cry. Finally, he gritted his teeth and made a decision. Relying on his memories, he sprinted desperately toward the royal palace. His instincts told him that he could find someone there to save her. When Nian Nian finally woke up, she was tightly wrapped in Fei Li's arms. She tried to pull away immediately, but his grip was too tight. She couldn't budge an inch. All she could do was stammer out a greeting. "Uncle Fei Li W, what are you doing here?" What she really wanted to ask was why he was holding onto her like his life depended on it. His dominant aura was absolutely suffocating. Even just sitting there, he radiated the intense power of a top predator. When he looked at Nian Nian, he forced himself to be as gentle as possible. "Your spiritual energy is a little unstable right now. You really need to get some more rest." Right then, Lu Zhan walked out of the study and handed her the medical report. Right there, in plain text, it showed that Nian Nian's spiritual energy levels had spiked again. Her current stats were officially a solid S-class, and she hadn't even fully awakened yet. Once she did, it would shoot up even higher, straight to double S-class. The moment Lu Zhan saw that report, he was in absolute shock. He sent a message to Leon, and also asked himself, "Do you really have what it takes? Are you strong enough to protect a double S-class female?" There had never been a double S-class female in the entire history of the Empire. Nian Nian was about to become the single most precious treasure in the universe. Even if he and Leon guarded her with their lives, it still wouldn't be enough. That was why Fei Li got the call. That was why he was here. He dropped down on one knee and made his solemn request once again. "I want to be your guardian. Let me protect you. Let me take care of you. Could you give me a chance?" This setup felt way too much like a marriage proposal. Nian Nian nervously sat up straight and gave a gentle little nod. Looking down from that angle brought a rushing thrill of conquest. For a split second, she actually felt like Fei Li had completely fallen under her spell. She quickly shook her head to snap out of it. Anyone else might fall for her, but Fei Li? Absolutely impossible. To break the awkward silence, Nian Nian asked where cotton candy had gone. She hadn't seen the little guy since she woke up. Lu Zhan hesitated, struggling with how to break the news to her. But even if he kept his mouth shut, there was no way he could hide it forever. Nian Nian's eyes welled up with tears. Did he think staying with me wasn't as fun as the outside world? Is that why he ran away? Lu Zhan rushed over and pulled her into a tight, comforting embrace. He asked her softly, do you want to ride a wolf? He was just a pet, after all. I can be your pet too. Without giving Nian Nian a chance to answer, he shifted into a massive snow wolf, wagging his tail eagerly and doing everything he could to make her smile. He was usually a guy who cared so much about his proud image, but just to coax her, he was willing to go to such lengths. Overwhelmed, Nian Nian threw her arms around the snow wolf and hugged him tightly. Taking a deep, shaky breath, she whispered, Zhan, thank you. Watching this unfold, Fei Li quietly took mental notes. When it comes to your beloved little female, throw your pride out the window. Making your girl smile is all that matters. Meanwhile, inside the imperial palace, a massive white tiger bolted right up to the emperor's bedchamber, only to be blocked at the doors by the royal guards. The white tiger bristled with wild, explosive rage, but he forced down his feral instincts and didn't attack. His mind was entirely consumed by Nian Nian. He desperately needed to get someone to save her. However, an out-of-control male beastman is completely stripped of reason. Because of this, even his flesh and blood, a berserk crown prince was strictly forbidden from coming anywhere near His Majesty the Emperor. Fortunately, the Emperor heard the commotion and rushed over, gasping in shock and pure joy. My boy, he actually found his way back home. The white tiger's eyes instantly lit up. He lunged forward, wanting to drag his father to go save Nian Nian. But to everyone else in the room, that sudden movement looked like a lethal, aggressive attack on the Emperor. Left with no other choice, the captain of the guard shouted a quick apology and fired a heavy tranquilizer dart right into the beast. The white tiger could easily have dodged it, but his mind was so fixated on saving his girl that his reaction was just half a second too slow. The moment he crashed to the floor, he let out a furious, heart-wrenching roar of absolute despair. A massive, heavy tear rolled down his fur. That dose should have kept the white tiger knocked out for 2 solid hours, but he fought through the haze and violently woke up in just one. His last memory was from days ago, back in the Crown Prince's chambers. A moment of reflection was all it took to realize his beast instincts had completely taken over. But when he pushed himself to remember the gap, a crushing, suffocating sense of emptiness washed over him. He knew, deep in his bones, that he had forgotten something incredibly important. Moments later, the Emperor and Empress rushed in, seeing him back to his normal self. They were absolutely overjoyed. According to the Imperial Archives, once an ancestral white tiger loses control of his beastly side, the maddened state lasts for at least a full month. But now, not only had the Crown Prince found his way home, he had completely snapped out of his berserk state. Tan Konglin shifted back into his human form. Learning that he had run off from the palace during his feral blackout, he slowly pressed a hand against his chest. Deep within the hazy fog of his shattered memories, there seemed to be a lingering trace of a soft, sweet-scented embrace that had held him so tenderly. Even with his memories gone, he knew with absolute, fierce certainty that this girl definitely existed. So, he told his father and mother that he wouldn't be attending the royal ball. He already had a female he liked. The Emperor was completely baffled. Since when? Just during these past few days when I lost control I met her. Tan Konglin said solemnly, even though I can't remember what she looks like right now. She is the only one for me. If her mental power is below an A grade, are you really going to insist on being with her? As the Emperor's most favored heir, Tan Konglin had always been sensible since childhood, always putting the greater good first. He shouldn't be making such an irresponsible decision. Faced with his father's questioning, he clenched his fists, remaining silent for a long, long time. After a while, the Empress smiled and smoothed things over. Well, who knows? Maybe the girl Konglin likes just happens to be an A-rank female. Anyway, let's focus on finding her first. The Empress asked him, how much do you actually remember about her? Regrettably, Tan Konglin couldn't remember a single thing. The Empress frowned. She suddenly remembered that fake news story from before, about the widowed female raising a sick cub all by herself. Last time, she had sent someone to contact the editor-in-chief of that news agency. But they hadn't managed to dig up any information at all. This time, she decided to just step in and ask about it personally. Even if there were no photos, they still had the boarding records for the public transport ships. They would definitely be able to track down that female's identity. However, Tan Konglin stopped the Empress. Of course, he wasn't about to give up. He just had other plans. And right around this time, Felix also found out that the Empress was actually looking into that news story herself. Was she interested in Nian Nian? No, maybe it was about that cat. He asked Nian Nian where that cat came from. The moment cotton candy was mentioned, Nian Nian's urge to share her story became completely unstoppable. she excitedly spilled everything to Felix about her time with the little cat. Felix listened quietly, speculating in his mind that cat was very likely His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince. That would be the only reason the Empress would personally step in to gather information. But the little cat Nian Nian described had a personality completely opposite to the Crown Prince. So, he carefully asked Nian Nian about the kitten's physical features, hearing that it had white fur, blue eyes, and a king's mark on its forehead. Felix's suspicions seemed to be completely confirmed. He didn't dare tell Nian Nian, but now that the little cat was gone it was probably never coming back. So, he carefully suggested, would you like a new kitten? Or maybe a puppy? I can buy one for you. Nian Nian shook her head, turning him down. Cotton candy is one of a kind. She didn't want a replacement. Well then, let me take you out to clear your head. Felix racked his brain, desperately trying to cheer her up. I actually own a primeval planet. The natural scenery is absolutely beautiful, and it's full of all kinds of wildlife. I even developed a hot spring on one of its snowy mountains. It's the perfect place for a relaxing getaway. Nian Nian's interest was successfully piqued. She tried to play it cool for a moment, but she just couldn't resist and agreed. Later, on the spaceship, Nian Nian knelt on her seat, curiously peering out the window. She looked exceptionally innocent and lively. When she finally snapped out of her daze, she caught Felix seemingly taking pictures of her. Instead of hiding, she struck a cute pose and gave him a smiling wink. She even made sure to show off the blue iris necklace around her neck to Felix. She had worn it specifically for this trip. He didn't seem to have much of a reaction to it. Seeing that he was about to post her photos on his Star Network social page, Nian Nian hurriedly reached out to stop him. But Fei just caught both of her wrists in one massive hand, effortlessly pulling her down onto his lap. It wasn't until Nian Nian felt like she was burning up from embarrassment that he finally let go, apologizing softly. Being so used to handling everything from a position of absolute authority, he had just done it on autopilot. Only realizing how inappropriate it was after the fact, he murmured, next time you can just slap me. Fei apologized with genuine guilt, while Nian Nian scrambled off his lap as fast as she could. She tried to brush it off, acting like it was no big deal, before quickly steering the conversation back to the photos. Please, whatever you do, don't post those pictures. After all, Fei was the Marshal of the Empire. If he just went ahead and posted pictures of her on his personal social media page, she couldn't even imagine the massive uproar it would cause. But once she found out he could set the post to friends only, she finally gave in and agreed. When the Emperor saw the post Fei had uploaded, he could hardly believe his eyes. Was this fierce lion actually falling in love? The Emperor took a closer look at the female in the photo. She looked strangely familiar. He searched through his memories for a moment, finally confirming that she was the little female named Nian Nian. A while back, a video of her calming down an out-of-control black mamba had caught the royal family's attention. Because of that, she had been specially invited to the royal ball, even though she hadn't awakened her mental powers yet. And now, seeing the notoriously cold and ruthless Marshal actually dating Nian Nian, the Emperor instantly sensed a golden opportunity. If Nian Nian really could awaken an S-class mental power, then she would be the absolute perfect match for the Crown Prince. Realizing that Fei had actually beaten them to the punch, the Emperor couldn't help but feel a rush of anxiety for his own son. He hurriedly summoned Tan Konglin. He urged his son to let go of his unrealistic fantasies, pulling out Nian Nian's photo to show him instead. Come take a look at this little female. What do you think of her? But Tan Konglin didn't even glance at it, flatly rejecting his father. He already had a female he deeply loved. He wouldn't spare a single glance for anyone else. The Emperor patiently tried to persuade him. This female is completely different. She has the potential to awaken an S-class mental power. You really need to meet her before she goes through her awakening. Win her heart early on. Who knows, you might just end up falling for her. But Tan Konglin fired back with absolute certainty. I will never like her. Whether she was an A- class female, or an S-class female, none of them could ever compare to that warm, soft embrace from his dreams.